Some of the artists who have illustrated Revelation include, most notably, Albrecht Dürer, William Blake, Turner. But what I did notice was that although I'm an enormous admirer of many of these creations, most of them, if not all of them, contained a lot of artist license, things that weren't in the Bible. And so therefore my take was to go back to the text and see if I could interpret the word images figuratively, so that if, for example, Bible students came to look at it, then they would sort of be able to see fairly precisely what the text was saying in visual terms.
I first got involved with this project about 8 years ago. I met David at a party, and he told me about the fact that he was making these images. And I said if he ever put these images on in some kind of gallery, I would make a soundtrack for him.
And knowing Rose's skills in this area, suddenly the exhibition, this tiny little exhibition that I had sort of considered, suddenly grew by about 1,000% and became something much bigger than I ever thought about.
So my first task was to edit the book down. If we'd done the whole thing, we'd have all been there for about 2 or 3 hours, which just felt overwhelming. There were certain passages that I felt we had to have because people know them. So we had to have 144,666, because everybody knows that. If that's the only thing they know about Revelation, it's got to be there. And we also had to have, I thought, the phrase Armageddon. Even though those bits weren't being set visually, I just felt that they were very important.
There are no translators that get it exactly right. If you get several translators translating something from one language into another, they'll all have a slightly different take or a different way of saying it.
We definitely wanted to use a modern version. This is a very 21st century take. And in fact, it was my husband that said to me, "You need a new translation, but that's not possible, of course." And just in that moment, I thought, oh yes, it is possible, because Margaret Barker had been championing this project for the last few years. David phoned her up, and I think the first chapter arrived by email the next morning.
And so I've had enormous fun going back to the original text and including in my images things that no one else would have done because they have been not necessarily working from the Greek text.
My next task was to cast the voices, and the most crucial voice is obviously the part of John, who has the majority of the text. And I was listening to the radio and I suddenly heard Joss Ackland, and I was so excited because it was the perfect voice.
And look, a throne set in heaven, and one enthroned upon the throne like jasper and carnelian, and round the throne a rainbow like emerald, and round the throne 24 thrones, and sitting on the thrones 24 elders.
In contrast to Joss, we needed Christ to be, in his 30s, and somebody with a intimate, comforting voice. And Julian Rhind-Tutt has that voice, and he really gives a beautiful performance.
He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who conquers, I will grant the right to eat from the tree of life in the midst of the paradise of God.
The idea is that the elements are hopefully going to come together to something, to create a whole that is greater than the sum of the parts. In terms of the readings, in terms of the sonic art, the soundscape, and obviously putting it with the visuals and the animation that is going into the visuals.
For some people it might be a deeply spiritual experience. For other people it might be a first encounter with a piece of literature. For other people it will be perhaps a dramatic event. And for some people it will just be interesting. Hopefully it will be interesting to anybody, because it's a way of opening up quite an obscure text in a 21st century way, and that was our aim.